There it goes.
There it is.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is the important part. So,
Exactly.
do we want to just kind of go down the topics, and each of us can say how we feel about each one?
Okay.
Yeah.
Add anything? So first of the 10, it was 10, right?
Yeah, we got to pick out at least 3. So
I say we just talk. There was 3 that I don't feel are applicable to this
agree.
particular project, but other than that, I think we can just talk about each of them.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just go down the line. We'll each talk about each one however we see fit.
Yep.
Yeah.
A worthy topic. This was definitely an amazing topic for an interview in a class based on leadership and building teams. Having a member with such a wealth of experience in those areas was almost like cheating. It was a great topic for an interview.
Thank you.
So I think it was.
And I think it was.
I think
That
we
was good.
achieved that criteria of a worthy topic.
I think it was also very informative because Tom had experiences in different parts where he talked about when he first got to Vietnam, he was kind of lower on the totem pole and was like new to the team and had to kind of was the newcomer. And then toward the end when he was more of a mentor and a leader. So I thought that was nice being able to have see that progression.
Yeah.
It was also relevant two-part, being relative to war and then also business. And I know Amy asked more questions relevant to the business part of things, but it was nice having kind of a two-part perspective.
Yeah, I agree.
Also.
Well, it was fun for me.
Am I supposed to say something?
You're up, Amy. Say something.
I mean, you guys pretty much said it all. Sorry, my internet says it's unstable. Yeah, he pretty much was the person with more experience. So I felt like it was a really good topic. Obviously, it relates to what we're dealing with. Yeah, I don't know.
When I first saw when she first posted about the interview before we even had our first Zoom meeting, and I had no idea who the rest of you guys were, I was dreading the fact. I was like, oh my God, if I have to be interviewed, my only team experience is from when I was in gymnastics when I was 6 years old and at Starbucks, and I'm going to have nothing to contribute. So it was awesome, like you said, having someone that had just such a variety of experiences. So.
All right. Any other comments from anybody?
Nope.
Rich Rigger was one that I did not feel was applicable to an interview. Everybody okay with skipping that one?
Yep.
All right.
Sure.
So sincerity. Amy, do you want to go first since last time we took everything before you could say anything? Do you have anything to say about the sincerity of our interview?
Can I go second?
I wanted to go second. Darn it. Just kidding.
I can go first. I thought that it was kind of like what you posted or what you wrote, but I thought it was great how transparent Tom was, where sometimes people only want to talk about success and only want to boost themselves up and be like, oh, I did such a great job in this setting. But I thought that it was really genuine the way, Tom, you were talking about sometimes there were failures, and I loved the story you had about not feeling confident with your co-pilot for one of the missions. And I think that that's something that oftentimes people wouldn't necessarily be freely admit. They just be like, oh yeah, it ended up working out that we had a different pilot. But I thought it was great that you were like, no, I didn't trust this guy, so I pulled someone else out of bed and said, you're coming with me. So
yeah, definitely how, I mean, pretty much it says genuine and vulnerable. You were pretty much honest with what you were saying. You didn't really it didn't really seem like you were very, I don't know what that word is. What's that word? Cocky. I mean, you didn't seem cocky. You were very humble about what you were saying too. And pretty much was there. So I was gonna piggyback on that, but yeah.
And this whole thing was very timely for me because I'm currently taking another course that's about the veteran experience. and it talks about veterans coming home from the Revolutionary War all the way up to and including today. So the topic was really on my mind. Plus, on Wednesday afternoon coming up, I'll be at Arlington National Cemetery, where they're having a dedication for the helicopter pilots and crew members killed in Vietnam. So the topic was really, has been on my mind a lot. So it was very neat that you wanted to hear. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or additions anybody has?
I don't think there's any question about the sincerity of Tom's interview, for sure.
Yeah, we hit that one. Next would be credibility. Anybody want to jump in and take it first?
I'll jump in. I don't think there was ever any question about Tom's credibility, but he certainly did a good job of explaining just the whole hierarchy of the medevac program. And then he also posted videos of another pilot and his, that TED Talks, and it just added to his credibility. Not that he needed to, but he did a good job of certainly adding to his credibility when it wasn't necessary. But it was good to see all that extra information that he passed on to us, which helped.
That guy in the TED Talk sure looked older than me, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. You aged much better than he did.
My boyfriend was here I was telling my boyfriend about your interview and how you started off with your helmet, and I love that. And like, there's no questioning. You can't just pick that up at Fred Meyer. Like, you clearly were there. You had the props to prove it.
Oh,
What is this? Thank you. I bought me some candy.
Oh.
Thank you, baby.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of said the same thing as you guys in there. I don't think anybody could really challenge Tom's credibility. Sean covered, he did a great job explaining all the hierarchy and all the different parts of his job as, medevac pilot, and started out with the helmet, like Sarah said. So definitely, I don't think anybody can question the credibility of our interviewee.
I think maybe what we want to add in there is that the description was of the team, though, because that's what the course is.
Mm-hmm.
So each team member had their own specialty, and it was explained, or focus it back on our course of a team rather than a mission.
Okay, gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's covered in the next one.
Possibly. Resonance.
Yeah.
So resonance, there are definitely many transferable findings in Tom's answers, especially dealing with how they took care of additions to the team and being able to make decisive decisions as a leader. I think that was the thing that resonated the most with me personally, was how much you stressed in a leadership role, whether your decision's the right decision or not, make a decision and stick with it, because if you're not showing the people around you that you're decisive, then they don't know they can trust you and they don't know they can follow you. So that was what got me the most from everything you talked about. So I think we covered that. Anyone else have comments?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a very interesting interview, and I think I learned a lot. So it definitely resonated with me. I'll take some of the stuff you said to heart in what I do, for sure.
I think one of the things that resonated with me was just how young you guys were. I was thinking about you know, I'm 31, and I was thinking about the fact that you'd said you went over there when you were 20 or 21,
Great.
and just to be put in that situation, I think it's something that my generation, I mean, the draft is something that is like in some ways such a foreign concept. Like we're aware of it, but it's something that I hadn't really thought about, just being like completely uprooted from what you were doing. And when you talked about like how you were going as a part-time student to establish residency, it wasn't like you'd stopped going to school. You had a very like specific plan, and this is something that in some ways derailed it and put you on like a different trajectory for your future. But that's something that, I don't know. Like I was just thinking about that for me, and if something like that would happen, like how I can't, I don't know. So that was what really resonated with me, was just the whole experience, everything leading up to what brought you to Vietnam.
Thank you. You just make lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah, my boyfriend's brother's in Afghanistan right now. He gets home next week, I think. He's been there since September. And so that was something I was also thinking a lot about during your interview, just kind of what his experience is like over there. So.
Yeah, I have to agree. I'm a couple years older than you, but I definitely don't think if there had been a draft when I was 20 years old, I can't imagine how me or anybody that I know that is my age would deal with something like that, having to go to a foreign country and get thrown into a situation like that. So that was definitely a good part of the topic. Any other comments or stuff anybody wants to add?
Yeah, nothing.
So the next two are significant contribution and ethical, which I feel probably are better covered in like a research study or something, not necessarily an interview like we were performing. So I was going to skip those if that's okay with everybody.
I think the contribution one could be, even though it wasn't like hard data, but just him talking about the team, and when he was talking about like the constant rotation. The thing I really liked, Tom, that you had said was how, you know, constantly rotating the members of the different missions, how it was really great for the mission of the company, but not necessarily the mission of the individual. And so that was something that I was thinking about just in terms of teams within, like, from a business context, where sometimes, you know, the business does what's good for the company, not necessarily what's good for the individual pieces, and how that factors into like being part of a team, and not like having to learn to not do what's best for you, but what's best for the team's mission. So that's kind of what I thought about in terms of the contribution. But
Yeah, that was my favorite question.
The only reason I skipped it was because it's, if you read the description of it on that chapter 11 thing, it basically is making it sound like it's like either conceptually significant or methodologically significant, like that kind of thing. It sounds like basically like if you're doing a scientific study, is it significant? Like, is it worth studying? So, but yes, that definitely
yeah, I was just thinking of it in terms of the practicality, or practically. I can't say that word.
Practicality?
definitely makes sense.
So
I added your comments to the doc. Anybody have anything to say about the ethicality?
I agree with you that there's not really.
We very unethically forced Tom to be the interviewee.
My pleasure, team.
So meaningful coherence. Anybody want to jump in and speak on that?
You look like the wheels are spinning, Amy.
Huh?
It looks like the wheel, like looks like you're thinking really hard.
I'm trying to read over the chapter 11 thing, but my internet's being very slow. Like I can't see anything. There it is. Meaningful.
I'll be right back. Go ahead and speak on that.
So I think for meaningful coherence, I mean, we definitely, the first bullet says the study achieves what it purports to be about. I think we definitely got that from Tom, that it was, you know, we learned a lot just about the team structure and what it was like to be a member of that team from Tom. The other stuff, I'm not sure really how I would tie in. I think the other stuff is a little bit more like hard data focused.
Yeah, I'm reading this and it's more like discriminant validity. You know, it's more cut and dry. Tom was more experience oriented. What is that? Subjective, I guess.
Mhm.
So, but also good. You know, so meaningful coherence is also about the logical and intuitive connection of various arguments or concept. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I think part of it was about the methods used as well, and I think I put in there that I think the roundtable interview was a good method to use because we
Yeah.
got to ask questions and get our follow-ups in when it was our turn, and then get information from all the other members as they went too. So I think that was a good method for an interview.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the roundtable made it so we all stayed a little bit more engaged. Like a lot of the times when Tom was answering other people's questions, it was like prompting me to think of like follow-ups for my own questions, and just rather than having it be like 5 individual interviews that just happened to happen back to back, it did feel like it was one like group, like team effort.
We collaborated.
We collaborated, the magic word.
I felt so collaborated.
Okay. Any other final comments or additions to that from anybody? All right. Part 2. So now think of the interview as a demonstration of how well you are working together as a team. Identify one thing you think went very well and analyze why you think it did. Then identify one thing that didn't go very well and do the same type of analysis. Add your thoughts on how to perhaps prevent a similar thing from happening in future teams. Is there anything that you'd add to the team charter now that you've worked on a team project? Anybody want to jump in with what they thought was the most successful part of our team interview?
Can I do the opposite?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Not saying that anything was bad, but I just think, you know how everyone, I felt like, okay, so he had both the business aspect and then his like career starting off. I feel like we could have had, not saying it's bad, but like we could have had mixed it up instead of like doing just focusing on that one part of his life instead of the other. Like it could have been like kind of like 1, like 2, and then 3, or like, you know, I mean, just more mixed up instead of like just focused on one thing. Because I felt maybe, am I going out? Sorry.
No.
My internet's probably like blah. But yeah, I feel like just more mixture instead of like one thing, since it was more of that mix instead of just like that one career that we were focusing on. So
yeah, that's
Yeah, we could have added that to the charter and made it more broad instead of just Tom's, which we definitely focus more on military career. We could have added in there professionally in your business career also, which would have made it more broad.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that we did really well was by having our questions ahead of time for Tom, it allowed him to like really reflect and think on them. And so it wasn't something like we asked him a question and then he's like, I'm not really sure, or like a lot of lag time. And so it felt like we got like we got really detailed and clear and like really good responses to our questions. None of them were really very vague, and that Tom, you had like great stories to kind of tie things in. So I think that was something that we did really well.
I think the questions were really well thought out, and the fact that I had them beforehand allowed me to answer them that way. I think you're exactly right. I think that the way the questions were, I could give how the team actually functioned rather than just talking about medical evacuation. If that doing their own thing inside of the crew of 4.
Well, that was something I think that you like were for sure helpful for, at least for me in this process, because I kept on thinking about this in terms of leadership instead of team. And so a lot of the questions that I had, I was at first thinking about like a leader's standpoint, and you kept on bringing it back to the team, which I thought was very helpful, since that was the scope of the project was about what it was like to be on a team and not what it's like to be a leader. So
yeah, and that mission in Vietnam was a team effort, not an individual effort, where building my business was more a leadership rather than a team.
mm-hmm.
So that's a really good point you're making.
Makes sense. Yeah, I thought definitely the most successful part was having such an experienced interviewee placed in our group with us. So I think we got really lucky on that aspect. It just made it much easier to find our interviewee, first of all, and then much easier to have a very successful interview, since Tom has so much experience and so much wisdom to share. So I think we did.
Well, and we did extra Zoom meetings to get ready for that thing. That was very, very good. That was a good team effort, if you will.
I think we did well on the preparation end of things.
I do too.
That helped out a lot. We weren't surprised by anything when we came to the meeting.
We didn't have redundant questions. I thought it was great that we had that Google Doc so we could kind of see what everybody was doing. Because a couple of questions that you asked, Sean, I like originally had in my that I jotted down as ones that I wanted to ask Tom. And then I was like, oh, well, Sean's already asking them, so I'll ask something else. So I think having that kind of collaborative document helped, so that we weren't all asking the same thing, so that we were able to kind of have a broader scope.
Yeah, and Tom did a good job of I guess expounding on questions. So a few of my questions were answered in previous questions, but he was still able to make them relevant, even though it had been covered in a way beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
So that was good too.
The only thing I was disappointed in was, Tom, you promised more stories. You promised that you'd be rambling and going off topic. I was looking forward to that. The stories were the best part. I loved that one about you pulling your roommate out of bed.
Yeah, I definitely couldn't think of anything that particularly went wrong.
I couldn't either.
I think as far as the big tent criteria goes, like we discussed, I think we hit most, if not all of those that are applicable to our interview. So yeah, I think it was a successful interview overall. Would anybody add anything to the charter now that they have their experience creating one and going through the group?
That Dr. Shanley mentioned before you came on, Brian, was what does our team charter say what we're going to do if you didn't show up for that interview? And so I think you want to mention that
we have something on?
we followed the team interview to the letter because everybody showed up.
Yeah.
So I think you want her to know that you showed up early in the introduction.
Yeah. I also want to apologize for being late. I had it in my head that it was going to be at 6 p.m. like all our 6 or 7 p.m. like all our other meetings, and luckily I was home from work at 2 o'clock and walking the dog and got a text and got down there. But I would have been very mad at myself if I had somehow messed that up and not been there.
Yeah, no worries.
I think you want to mention that you came in just after the.
I did in my recap. I put in there
Good. Okay.
a few minutes late, but showed up for the meeting and was able to get through all the questions. So.
Right.
But we did have something in our charter about participation, didn't we?
Yeah, I think we had something about like if, like for when Amy, when you had work and couldn't make one of the meetings, and so, you know, if someone wasn't able to participate, she, you know, Amy contributed her stuff ahead of time and then watched
Right.
the YouTube. So we did have some stuff in the charter. I guess we just didn't have anything in the charter about like a group project.
Yeah, I think the thing we have in our policies for failure to communicate absence from a meeting or inability to perform their assigned role will be passed on to the professor after multiple attempts at correction. So we didn't define a specific, I guess punishment is probably not the right word, but punishment for, you know, not showing up to something that big would probably be, you know, the professor finding out that I didn't show up for the meeting, so my grade probably would have suffered because of that.
I think your team would have backed you up a little bit, though. You'd have probably been okay. We wouldn't have thrown you under the bus.
Well, I mean, she could have, if she really cared, she could look at the video and see that I wasn't there if I didn't show up. So.
Yeah, well, we actually talked to her a little bit about it. She's like, well, what do you guys want to do? And she's like, technically, he should get a 0. And we're all kind of like, well, I don't think he should get a 0. He contributed to every other aspect of the charter and the interview. So him get a 0 would be not right. So.
No, plus all the preparation that you did.
Exactly. Yeah. So that wasn't ever going to be. I mean, I guess we could have added more specifically to the charter regarding that, but
yeah,
in reality, I don't think it would have been.
The
You
thing
need
is
it.
kind of like a little bit more of a step back, but not necessarily something to add to the charter. But through this whole process, I guess I realized like that a charter is like constantly evolving. That it's not something like you have a team and then you're like, all right, this is exactly how things are going to go, because situations are going to pop up that you wouldn't even consider. And for us, when we made this charter, like we didn't know what the frick we were doing in the team. Like we were just like, wait, what's the point? Are we doing the simulation? And she's like, no, you're just being a team. And we're like, okay, but what's this purpose of the team? And I think sometimes there are different, like I've been part of a team where there are people that are just like perpetually like absent, and they just like last term I was part of a group project and there was one person that just like didn't show up until week 4 and we're like, okay, that's not something we could really anticipate, you know, day one when we were first doing stuff. And so we had to kind of keep on changing and evolving. And I think that's something I learned with this class as well, where there were things like each week where it was like, oh,
we lost your sound, Sarah.
We lost your sound.
oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
No.
At the end of whatever you were saying, we lost sound.
Okay. But like, I think that there's been different, each week there have been parts of the like assignment instructions, and it'll say like, oh, did you include something about X in your team charter? And some of the times we have and some of the times we hadn't, because they just weren't necessarily things that we knew back in week 2 to even consider. So I think,
Right.
I don't know.
We didn't even know what our team was going to be. I mean,
Yeah.
We
you
didn't
could
know
have said you're going to be a
goal or anything.
volleyball team. For all we know, you know, we didn't know what she was going to have us do. So it's hard to create a charter based on nothing, you know, not knowing what we're going to do.
Well, and I think with teams too, like something like at Starbucks, I'm in charge of all of our like inventory and sales plans, and so I have to deal with like looking at all of the metrics and like profits and loss, and that's not something I necessarily knew when I moved out here to Boston. I wasn't doing that in any of my other roles, and so it was like something I had to take on. And the team dynamic I'd had in Seattle and the team dynamic I had in Portland was very different than like coming out here. And so when I first was organizing the team, I was thinking back to like prior team experiences in terms of what like my expectations were of the people below me. And then I had to completely like reformat that because I had like different people, different roles, different responsibilities. And so I think that, you just don't always know what's gonna what to expect. Like you can say this is what I want, but until you interact with the people and know different people's strengths and weaknesses and what's going to be like constant obstacles, I don't think that you can necessarily have a perfect charter at day one.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So,
I think in this course right now, there's 12 or 14 different teams. It's hard for me to imagine that any team is working better than this one.
Yeah.
This is really a great experience from where I sit.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm enjoying this class. I get a little frustrated with some of the like organization, but
Right.
in terms of like this experience, and I was not very open-minded in the beginning. When I saw that we were going to be doing like these group projects and like having to have these meetings every week, I was like, oh my God, like I can't, this isn't what I signed up for.
In my mind, I'm like, there's a reason we take online classes. It's like we need flexibility, you know?
Yeah.
And, I'm like, time. I got to schedule days where other people are relying on me to be there. It's like, oh my goodness, this is going to be hard for me to commit to stuff like this. But it worked out and it's been enjoyable for me too.
Yeah.
Well, if you think of it, it's like the real world where sometimes you're going to have things that you have to make sure you schedule into your time and stick with, even though you have other things you'd rather be doing or need to be doing or something like that. So kind of helps in future careers.
Yeah.
Time management and planning.
Yeah. Which makes me think like that's the grand scheme. Her grand scheme is more that than any of the, I'm just thinking here, than any of the stuff, because she obviously doesn't value any of the scheduled tasks that we have to do, you know.
Well, and that's what she said.
But anyway.
She said like she doesn't care about the assignments, but that the university requires her to have things that we submit and grade, and she really cares more about, you know, she can't force groups to do the Zoom meetings because, again, like you said, with online classes, like who knows. One of my like my academic advisor was saying that one of her people was also registered for this class but is deployed overseas in like the Philippines, and was like, I can't do Zoom meetings when I'm in the Philippines like that, and had to drop the class. And so I think that I don't know, I think that it is more about like these virtual teams and kind of building that relationship with people, even though we've never actually met in person, but being able to say like, okay, I can trust that you guys are going to do this. Like, I know that you guys trust that I'm going to schedule the meetings, or, you know, whatever, that we all have our roles to play and have like, we work, like you guys have all said, I can't imagine any of the teams is more effective or like has as good of a relationship as we do. So.
Nobody collaborates like we do.
No one collaborates like we do.
All right. Well,
All right, are we done? I'm going to start crying here in a minute.
I was going to say, does anybody have anything else they'd like to add to our post-interview assessment?
Are you going to put a citation on this for the for the textbook and the chapter 11 thing?
I'm not turning this in to anybody, so I'm not going to cite anything. This is just for brainstorming.
Yeah, I guess we could reference this, huh, Brian, for our own.
Yeah.
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 As discussed at the beginning, Tom, we don't have to turn this in. The only thing we have to turn in is a post after this describing what we did in this meeting. There's no actual assignment turn in for this.
Yeah.
I see.
So make sure you already have your after interview summary. So just put another summary in the same forum that says interview assessment summary, and then summarize what we did in this meeting, and then we post the video like we do with all the other assignments, and then that is our thing we turn in for this assignment is just the video.
And so Tom, you can, if you want to like put stuff directly from the text, you can, but the summary is supposed to be more about like what you would, so you can reference the text and say, I had mentioned, like looking at what you wrote, but you can, you know, drop in one of your quotes. Just make sure that it's talking about your specific contributions, because I keep getting docked points for that.
Yep. And are we going to then submit this link in the same place that we submitted the interview?
This link I'll just post in the discussion board.
Are you going to post it, Sarah, in the discussion board?
Yeah,
This
so I'll
link?
post this link in the discussion
Yeah.
board. We don't have to
Okay.
submit it as a Word document like we did the other one. I just don't know if it takes like an hour to upload to my computer and then like an hour to upload to YouTube. So I'm not sure if I'll still be up that late. If I am, I'll post it tonight. If not, I'll send her an email and just say, you know,
Yeah.
it's 11 p.m. my time. I'm not staying up till 1 in the morning just to post
Right.
it.
I think she'll be forgiving on that.
So,
All right, fair enough.
all right.
So everybody make sure you have 2 posts on the discussion board by tonight. One recapping the interview itself and one recapping this meeting, because that's the 2 assignments.
Yeah.
Got it.
And we already,
And-
Sean already submitted the group assignment of the interview itself.
And we're calling this the discussion 5.3?
Yeah.
Interview analysis.
Yeah, so this one's a 5.3, the assessment, and
The discussion interview and now.
Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah, interview analysis.
Yeah, it's the last one on unit 5,
mhm.
-3, team discussion interview analysis.
Just post it in group discussion board, unit 5 discussion, label it, and then
And we're going to use that link as part of this?
yeah, Sarah's gonna upload a link also.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I'll have 3 posts this week. I'll have one of my interview assessment, or one of my interview summary, one of this summary, and then I'll have a 3rd post of just the YouTube.
Very good.
And she had said, just make sure that you clearly state that one of them is the summary of the interview and one of them is the summary of the analysis. That you need to make sure that she can distinguish between the 2. Cool.
Yep.
Good.
All right. Anything
Are
else?
we gonna, do we need to schedule another meeting for next
We
week?
have one Tuesday, remember?
We already scheduled one for Tuesday.
Sarah?
Yeah, I think I thought I sent the link out. I scheduled it. Did I
Okay.
send you guys the link already?
I don't know.
Bet you did.
Let me just double check.
Get too many emails, so I have no idea.
I know I had to make a separate folder in my Gmail just for this class.
Yeah, I hate the class email system.
Got it.
I feel like it'd be easier.
I don't have.
That's one thing I would add to the charter. Like, let's share our normal email addresses so that it's just like one thread of emails instead of having like 100 different emails, because
Yeah.
it sends a different email every time you send an email.
I don't have an invite for Tuesday. I'm looking at my email right now.
Amy, you said you got it though?
Yeah, on April 12th,
Okay.
Okay, hold on. Let me go
2
back.
days ago.
Okay, for the 17th.
Yeah.
April 17th at 6 p.m.
Yeah, it's 6 p.m. for them, 9 p.m. for you and me, Tom.
Okay. Yes, I'll be in.
All right, I got it.
I might have deleted it, I guess. I don't see it, so.
Okay, I can resend it to you.
Able to
I'll
resend
send it in just regular Gmail though, Brian, so it's not the funky one.
Okay. Yeah, that throws me off because I end up getting so many emails that I just can't get through them to see what's supposed to be happening.
Okay.
Oh, wait, no.
April 12th.
I have it. Never mind.
You have it? Okay.
Didn't go back far enough, but I got it. Okay.
All right, Tuesday.
See you guys Tuesday.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.